So we're both at the FIEC conference in Blackpool.
So what can you see behind us?
Well, there's lots of different lights and very fancy architecture, if you can see that as well.
I think it's the Empress Ballroom, isn't it?
Something very fancy like
someone
that.
told me that this is where they filmed Strictly Come Dancing.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
It sounds very fancy.
Sounds plausible, doesn't it? Anyway, what are we doing?
So we are coming to feedback some of the questions that you guys asked from the Women in Ministry hot topic that we did. So we're just going to answer some of those questions and look through those together.
We'll try to.
Attempt to, yeah, exactly.
How much practice have we had?
None. This is
a bit off the cuff, this is.
Off the cuff.
And it's quite late in the evening, so we might just talk gibberish. But anyway.
So, Question one. Well, the first two questions are sort of very similar together. So one of them is, how would you define feminist? Is feminism compatible with Christianity? And the other one links into that. Why do people, men in particular, within Christianity stray away from feminism? So I think really the question is, how does feminism mesh with Christianity?
Okay.
I think, really. Do you want to...
Who's going to have a stab at that first? I think it should be you.
I would identify as a feminist. Most people, a lot of Christians I know might not even use that word because they don't like what's associated with it. Yeah. I think the problem is that when somebody says feminist to you, people immediately get a bunch of different thoughts in their mind. And some of it
there's quite a lot of baggage associated with that term, isn't there?
Yeah.
So what's helpful and what isn't helpful, do you think?
In terms of feminism?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's thinking about how we're both created equal. Men and women are created equal. And I think that the fact that we should acknowledge that, and we should make sure that we're encouraging both men and women. I think that where the problems lie is when we push one gender over the other gender, and I don't think it tends to go very well. And I think historically, and even especially nowadays, a lot of feminists can tend to push women over men, and I think that also can be really detrimental, just as the other way around can be.
It's fair to say, though, isn't it, that feminism didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of a place of women feeling that they were very much second-class citizens. So, and I think that was true in church as well, as we explored on that evening, didn't we? So, what else are we going to say about this then?
So I think really, I guess the short answer to the question is that feminism. It depends on how you choose. It depends on what your association is with the word feminism. Because if it is feminism of the equality of the sexes, yes, that should be associated with Christianity, because that is what we're taught in the Bible. If it's feminism in the sense of one gender is better, I don't know if that's biblical.
Well, I do.
Well,
it definitely isn't.
Well, yes. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much all that.
Okay.
I think that's all that there is to say on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Next question. I can't read that, it's too small. Go on.
Most of the Bible appears to have been recorded by men. Is it possible that this has created a very male focus on, for example, Jesus' ministry on earth?
Right. So the Bible was primarily written by men, wasn't it? There are books like Ruth and Esther. Thank you, Esther. I knew there's another one. I don't even know that we don't know whether they're written by men or women, I guess. But they're certainly about women. And of course, women appear in women. Some of the best characters in the Bible are women. And I think when you look at the ministry of Jesus, some of the best stories and the best characters are the women, aren't they? What was the question again?
Most of the Bible appears to have been recorded by men. Is it possible that it's created a very male focus on, for example, Jesus' ministry on earth?
Right. So, Jesus chose 12 male disciples, didn't he? I guess patterned after the 12 tribes of Israel that had male leaders. Someone like John Piper would say that Christianity has a masculine feel to it. and I'm not sure I agree with him on that necessarily, but I can see where he's coming from. That kind of, there were 12 male disciples, of course, but I think there was reasons for that as well. I mean, I think there were, you've got the idea of male eldership and male headship in the family and in the church, and so I think that was inevitable. And as a, we're a complementarian church, aren't we? So we don't shy away from that. But that does bring its own challenges, which we can come on to in a minute. But also, of course, that the culture of the day was such that women's testimony didn't even count in court. So it wouldn't have made any. If Jesus had come as a woman, I mean that would have, I think, caused all kinds of problems with theology. But I think people wouldn't have listened. It wouldn't have had the time of day. So I think it was inevitable that Jesus chose 12 male disciples just because of the culture they were in, but also to demonstrate this idea of headship. You want to add
Well, I guess, on top of that, also what we do forget though is the fact that women do have a very important place in the Bible, just as men do, and the fact that women were the first to see the resurrection, the fact that the grave was empty. If you ever done any study of history ever, you will know that women are not included, as John was saying, as any sort of testimony, and the fact that they even included that at all would immediately put some people off as in those sort of times as this is not credible, this is absolute tosh. And so they chose to put that in for a reason, and that it happened for a reason. And I think that women are shown to be so important. It's through seeing the resurrection and the empty grave, and through the way that Jesus treats them, like we spoke about I think on the evening as well. Women are not something that Jesus pushes to the side. He calls them to him. He spends time with Martha and Mary. He talks to the woman who's got a bleeding problem and spends time with her. So I think that's yes, there is a potentially. I think that men had a big writing of the Bible, but I think that's also, again, contextual. Education, scribing, that was all, men were trained in that, women would not be. Yeah. But I think we underestimate the role that women do have. And also, if we're talking about Jesus' ministry, well, I hope that there's a focus on Jesus' ministry in the Bible, because he is kind of the key bit, So if we're missing that, and if it's instead focusing on Esther, and that's the whole running through, then we're kind of missing a whole lot.
Sure. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Right, what's the next question, Becky?
I believe many complementarian churches make it a high priority to have a paid women's worker. Where does Park Church stand on this ministry priority?
Right. Are we going to have a paid women's worker? If money were no object, of course we would. Obviously we would. And I mentioned, I think complementarian churches do have particular challenges, and I think making sure that women do have a voice and a platform is one of the challenges for complementarian churches, for sure. And that's why we make every effort to include women up the front at church. So we believe that the main preaching ministry should be done by the elders of the church, which biblically is male, we believe. But aside from that, I don't really see any restrictions in what women can get involved in. So I'm trying to get women up the front to pray and to do the Bible readings, and it would be lovely if we had a female worship. Oh, we have got a female worship leader. Sorry, Sandra. and leading worship and just being as involved as we possibly can be. I think that's really important. And I think in the past, maybe there's been a reluctance to do that. Lest we cross a line somewhere and start straying into territory that we shouldn't. But I think I just think that's a terrible idea, especially in our culture. I think you have to be seen to be doing everything you can to affirm our equality in the Lord Jesus. So. Yeah. So in answer to the question, are we going to have a paid women's worker? I would love us to have a paid women's worker. Is it the priority for us right now? I'm not sure it is, actually. I think there are other priorities for us at the moment. We'll talk more about that at the members' meeting.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think women's work should be highly sought after. It's good to have women taught in theology. Again, as we spoke about in the evening, a lot of women were being taught by women. That is how they learn theologically, because they're breaking it down and they're making it like, oh, John does a great job up front, of course. And like, that's not to dismiss any of the male teaching, but these are really good things to think about. But it's not a priority at the moment.
Yeah, nice one. Is this the last one?
Yes. I think basically about. Should I just read the question? John talked about wanting to move as close to the line as possible. It was clear that at Park the line is that elders should be men, but what about preaching?
Okay, so we've talked a bit about this already, haven't we? Yeah, so the preaching on a Sunday, I think, is the role of the elders of the church. But having said that, I think there are plenty of opportunities for women to be speaking as well. I mean, we had you speaking, Becky, on a Sunday evening. I think for me, and I think where exactly you draw that line is going to vary by who you ask. For me, where you draw that line is eldership. I think that's the biblical place where you draw the line. Is eldership, and I think the main teaching of the church should be done by the elders of the church. Having said that, I do think the elders of the church don't have to be preaching all the time, and I think there's all kinds of opportunities for women to be doing speaking, leading, teaching from the front. And I think particularly as we're training women, and you've done some theological training the last couple of years, haven't you? And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think to have an outlet for that is really, really important and really special. So you maybe ask the question, well, why don't we have women preaching on a Sunday morning? Obviously, you've done some stuff on a Sunday evening, haven't you? Why not on a Sunday morning? Now, okay, let me answer that by saying this is my personal view, all right? So I'm absolutely complementarian, but I think there are many contexts where women can teach and preach very effectively. So, for example, I've been to conferences where there've been women speaking. It's been brilliant. You go to Bible college, you're more than likely going to have some female lecturers who will be far cleverer than you and very, very effective at what they do. A load of the commentaries that I've got are written by women, and they're great. It's not that women can't do theology or can't teach theology. It's how you do that in the local church. That's the question. And there's a question of theology, and there's a question of pastoral responsibility as well. And so my personal view is I'd have no problem having, let's say for example we had a woman on the mission field somewhere, and she comes back and we get her to share what she's been doing on a Sunday morning, and we get her to share from the Word. I've got no problem with that at all. I'll be quite happy with that. Why? Because she's not an elder of the church, and she's not the pastor of the church. And so to have that as a one-off, I would be greatly blessed by having that. So it's that sort of of one-off kind of thing, or occasional, like we have visiting speakers and all those kind of things, I've got no problem with that. Now, so that's my theology. My pastoral responsibility, though, is to hold us together as a church and not divide over what could be quite a contentious issue. So we just need to tread that line carefully. And I've always endeavoured not to change anything without teaching on it first. And we haven't done a lot of teaching on that kind of thing. So that situation is not going to change at Park anytime soon. Doing stuff on a Sunday evening is an ideal place for that, I think. But I think the Sunday morning main preaching slot is just one that we just have to guard for the foreseeable, I'm going to say. Because and I know some people watching this, you think, well, that's just what are you on about? That's just crazy, Surely you can have women preaching, and that's your theological background, but that's also your pastoral background, and that's not ours. So we're all the products of our history, aren't we? And we just have to be very careful not to cause divisions where it's unnecessary to do so. So that's probably set up a whole bunch more questions for people. But I think, do you want to add anything to that? Or?
I guess just as a summary statement, is just sort of like women are loved and valued by God and by Jesus and in the Bible. And perhaps sometimes the church, historically, as in the church generally, has struggled with that. And there's all sorts of working out issues and history of church and what have you to add into that. But it's not something that we should shy away from talking about and not discuss, even if we disagree. And that's why we've aimed to do this. So yeah, I'd probably just say that in summary.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. Well, we're going to leave you now. Cheerio, everybody. See you Sunday. Bye.